Hi, everybody. Wait, did somebody bring Kleenex for everybody? Are we okay? Because this show can knock you out. I watched it again. I think it was like the third time, and I still was like, oh. When Jared McCraney shows up, I kind of lose it a little bit. I'm Jim Halterman, West Coast Bureau Chief at TV Guide Magazine. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We're going to talk about this amazing show, this episode in particular. Let's bring out some of the people responsible for it. Executive producer and showrunner Elizabeth Berger. Welcome. And executive producer, showrunner Isaac Aptaker. Welcome, you guys. Now, before we get to this episode, because I know everybody wants to talk about just the inner workings of it all, how did you guys get started together? Because writing teams are not rare in Hollywood, but it's usually a good story how you guys started working together.
It's not that good of a story. We went to college together. We went to NYU, to Tisch, where we studied dramatic writing. We were friends first, and then towards the end of college, we decided to try writing a pilot together, and we did, and it went relatively smoothly. So we moved out to LA and decided to, give it a shot professionally. And then I started working for a movie producer named Robert Court as his assistant, and he found out that I was a writer and asked us to come in and sort of pitch him what we were working on. So we had just started writing our first screenplay. So we came in and told him what that was, and he liked the sound of it. So he developed that with us over the course of like 9 or 10 months while I was, on his desk, like scheduling and rolling calls and all of that. And then once we finished it, he was cool enough to send it out, and we were signed off of that. And then we kind of started working. Yeah.
That's great. What are your do you have different sensibilities? Or are they kind of the same, or does one deal with one type of subject matter or emotion differently?
There's a lot of crossover, I think, which you need in order to work together for so long. But yeah, I think I tend to gravitate towards sort of the more emotional stuff, and you probably the jokes, I guess. But
you can tell that episode was hilarious. So I'm killing it.
He doesn't do very much. No, but we both do both.
Well, and you got when I looked at your credits, there were a lot of comedies on there. Yeah. Like Grandfathered with John Stamos and About a Boy with Minnie Driver. So going to This Is Us, was that a big leap, or was that actually pretty natural for you as writers?
It was pretty organic. It's funny because Dan Fogelman, who created the show and we've worked with sort of in some capacity going back 7 or 8 years now, he was also, he was a big sitcom and Pixar guy too. So it's like the three of us have these comedy backgrounds, but this is really what we love. We love dramedy. We love like James L. Brooks and Cameron Crowe and all those kind of those great movies and auteurs that were able to really seamlessly blend the genres. This episode in particular is not exactly the funniest, but we try on the show to have real uplift amidst the darker moments.
Because you guys all worked on The Neighbors, right?
Yeah, we did 2 years of The Neighbors with Dan, and then we did Grandfathered, which Dan executive produced. Okay,
if you guys remember The Neighbors with the aliens and everything, it's almost funny to think that would lead to This Is Us.
Yes, it is. Yeah, true.
And how do you guys work? I know how Writer's Room works with everybody kind of working together to some point, but when you actually sit down to write, do you write side by side? Do you each take a pass and then send it off?
We do not write side by side. That does not tend to go very well. But we usually go off with sort of like an extensive outline, and we'll split up and we'll each write, an act and a half or so, and then we come together and we sort of rewrite everything together until we
we have a big TV screen in our office, and we just throw it up on that. And by the end, you can't remember which scene you started out with because it's all so blended. Yeah.
And when you started, you guys were there from the start with This Is Us, right? Mm-hmm. With Dan. Dan Fogelman's the other showrunner and creator of the show. In those early days, did you know the show would kind of hit? Because I remember all the buzz about the trailer and all that. But because outside of the time jump, there's not a big hook in the show. It's a family drama.
No, we had read the pilot and we thought it was incredible. And then we saw the pilot and we saw what the cast did, and we just thought, this is amazing, but you still have no idea how anyone will receive it. It's not normal for it to sort of catch on, and it's never been our experience that it sort of catches on in such a big way. So we were hopeful and we believed in it, but I think you just don't know until it goes on TV.
Yeah, it's like you said, it was so not what was working at the time. Like there hadn't been a show like this in a while. And, we made those first 3 or 4 episodes of season 1 in kind of a bubble because those were before we premiered. And, we would watch them, and we all loved them and thought they were really special, but we aren't exactly impartial. And then, once it went out there, it was just so cool to see how it connected with people.
Well, talk a little bit. I assume everybody here watches the show regularly, right? Like everybody knows Okay. It's like this wasn't the first time you're like, wait, what happened to
It's
the
like a
dad?
weird first episode to watch. You're like, wait, there's like a car and a dead guy.
Like, the dad's dead, but he's not, and I don't get it. But, you know, the fact that so much of the series has been around Jack's death, and of course, in the journalism trade, like it's all people have been talking about, and when are we going to find out? And I want to know a little bit about just how that has been keeping it as a thread through the whole series up to this point.
Yeah, well, it was hard to keep a secret because
You guys made our lives really hard because we do these like weekly post-show interviews every week. So like for a year and a half, you can't say anything. Like all they're trying to do is get out this information, and all we're trying to do is not lose our jobs. So it's like it's this push and pull of what to reveal.
But yeah, it was very important to us, especially going into this season, to sort of into season 2, to parse out information in a way that felt satisfying to people and that they didn't turn on us, you know, for not telling them anything. So we wanted to come back, and in sort of the first episode back, you see the house, you see the fire, so you're given this big clue, and then we wanted to sort of steadily build to sort of giving the whole thing away, because you can only hold it so much before people get annoyed.
Who's responsible for kind of the crock pot? I mean, because it's all about the crock
The
pot.
slow cooker. It's not a crock
cooker,
pot. It's a slow cooker.
sorry.
It's very important.
Slow cooker. I'm from Indiana. I call it crock pot, but
I think we had it kept on switching which household appliance it was. For a long time, it was a coffee maker, and then eventually the slow cooker. It felt like the most like it's the kind of thing that you like leave on during the day, and you don't quite like. It felt like the right choice. But there was much debate over what type of kitchen appliance would be the cause.
were you guys surprised at just all the interest and just all the fascination with Jack dying? Because a lot of people I know thought it should have been wrapped up in season 1 and then season 2. Like, how long we have to wait? And how was that from where you guys sat?
Yeah, I think it's sort of annoying to be like, we were surprised because we designed it this way. So I'm of two minds where obviously it was designed this way from season 1, but we did not expect sort of the intensity of which people sort of thought about the question, how did he die? I think that sort of surprised us.
Yeah, I mean, we did sort of, we encouraged it in a way with the storytelling, but I do think that there's so much more to the show than just that mystery. And I think what we were trying to show in season 1 by not wrapping it up is like, this is just one piece of this family story, and there's so much more here to wonder and to learn that even if we're not tying that one up just yet, there's other stuff.
Well, I think I can speak for probably a few other people here that think you guys did lay it all out beautifully, and the episode after the Super Bowl, which is right before this episode, was just fantastic. See, a few people. Okay, there we go. Some peeps out there. So, of course, I mean, you guys followed up the Super Bowl episode. I mean, with this episode, how daunting was that to kind of step into this and knowing, okay, now we know how he dies. Now we have to go on from that.
I was most worried that people would turn on the amount of sadness they were given in a short amount of time, because our Super Bowl episode obviously aired on Sunday, and then this was on Tuesday, and we were sort of like, it's too much. Like, it's too much to deal with. But I think in a way, I hope it ended up being really good, because it was almost like we all needed to sort of continue that grieving process together, and I think hopefully it felt really satisfying to sort of do them that close together.
Yeah, I mean, this was a tricky one for a bunch of. There was a lot of pressure on it. It's also, we've seen so many funeral episodes, and there's so many tropes related to that. So that's why we were so excited about this notion of the car and sort of coming at it from a really unique angle, and also sort of showing the audience like Milo is not gone from this show. This show doesn't exist in one time frame. It exists all over time, and he's still a huge, huge part of this family story. So it was a way of telling the audience that the time with Jack, just because we now have gotten this answer, our stories with him are not at all over, and doing all of these vignettes that he's so prominent in was our way of reassuring people a little bit. Like, there's still more Jack out there.
Was it hard to come on the idea that you kind of build the episode around the car and buying the car and how the car played in their lives?
That idea came out of our writer's room, and it was one of those ideas that you hear and sort of instantly everyone was like, yes, let's do that, which doesn't happen very often. But I think there is such a sort of instant nostalgia associated with the family car, and it felt like a way that we could also revisit really joyous times in their lives and like create this balance in the episode. So I think we all sort of right away were like, that's the way to tell this story.
Okay. And I mentioned Jerry McCraney already. I just love that moment where he turns up. Was that always the plan, or did you know he was going to be in this episode, or when did that come into the framing of the episode?
always looking for ways to include him in the show, but it's such a fine line because it's like he was like their fill-in, delivery doctor. He wasn't even their actual doctor. So there's like, you don't want to stretch the credibility too much of like how often can they actually see this guy. But it did feel like he had such a connection with this family and with Jack that this was a really just like honest one that he would fit into. So literally whenever it makes sense story-wise, we want him there because he's such an amazing guy, and he can do no wrong. I mean, so as soon as we realized, yeah, of course Dr. K's at Jack's funeral, we wrote him in.
Well, I can't remember now because I've watched the episode so many times, but was this the episode where we did find out that Jack had been going to him, or did we know that? We did find out.
We find that out in this episode.
And that's a big deal too, because it just goes to show that the show will keep surprising us with those things, like relationships we think we know. You guys will pepper in new things.
Yeah, I mean, we've only spent 36 hours with this family. It's spread over 2 years, so it seems like a long time, but it's in a life, it's pretty short.
Well, and I'm always fascinated with, and this is a good episode because you get to see all the kids. You get to see the little kids, the teenagers. Just how was it to write for them? Because they all seem to have the same voices, so they all look alike. I mean, they all look like who they're supposed to be, but how challenging is it to write for each kind of set of...
It's really exciting because they're also just getting better and better and more impressive as actors. I mean, especially this one, like I watch Hannah's performance, our teenage Kate, and it's incredible, like sort of how she's grown with the show. It's such a beautiful performance. And I think we find that with all of them, that they sort of knock us out.
Yeah, they watch the adults and they absorb their little tics and mannerisms. And I mean, hats off to our casting department who does such a great job, like constantly finding people who are not only talented, but like have the same heads as each other, which is not easy to do. Like, but they keep on doing it. So.
Because even I think it's Logan who plays the teenage Kevin. I mean, he even has like the little mole on his face.
Also kudos to our hair and makeup department for there's not everyone's biologically exactly the same. So we do contact lenses and birthmarks and stuff, but
we're shattering everything tonight, people. Since you guys have been with the show pretty much from the start, what did you learn from season 1 that helped you craft season 2 as far as writing?
Good question.
That is a really good question. We learned, one thing that was cool as the show kind of evolved and as our audience sort of learned this unique storytelling style where we jump through time, is we could get more complicated with the way we tell stories and trust that people would be able to follow it because they understand, like, Jack has a goatee in this time period and Hannah is playing Kate in this time period. And so because of that, we've done episodes in season 2 that jump through like 5 or 6 totally distinct storylines on different coasts and in different decades, and people are totally with us. So that's been really exciting to just keep on pushing the limits of how complicated we can get with these time jumps.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot looser with our flashbacks. Like we realized we can go to William for a scene and it's really satisfying because it's so exciting to see him. So that was different. And yeah, I think sort of the way we use them too. First season, we were sort of worried like every character's sort of backstory has to relate to the present story. And I think we freed ourselves a little of that in season 2, and we sort of let some things touch and some things not as much. But yeah, our audience has sort of really gone with it and sort of learned to follow it.
Do you still think about new viewers that might be coming to the show in season 2 and how to make sure they can kind of catch up?
Yeah, we do, especially for something like the Super Bowl episode where a lot of the audience was new, which, I mean, it starts off with like this action movie where even if you have no idea who these people are, it's like there's children in a house that's on fire and there's a dog. Like, I'm going to watch that. So yeah, we are, you're going to appreciate it, I think, on like a different level. It's not going to be quite as powerful, but we're always hoping people will go, what is this? And then really go back to the start, because you can't really appreciate a show like this without going back, but you do want to pique people's interest enough to hop on Hulu and start from the beginning.
I did think about that when I rewatched the Super Bowl episode, because it does start off with the bang, so to speak, but it is. So I think if you didn't see it, you'd just be like, oh my God, this is intense. Like, this isn't just people at a table talking.
Right.
It's great. It's great. There's little things in the show that pop up frequently, like even because I just watched the finale, the fact that Kate in this episode asks, can we not spread all the ashes? And then they do it. She does it before her wedding. Spoiler alert. But there's a lot of things, even like, the necklace that Kevin wears that was his father's, and little things. How do you guys keep track of all that? Because it's just a lot of things that you kind of forget about for a while, and then when it shows up again, it's that satisfying, like, oh. Yeah,
that's where it's helpful to have 10 of us, because there really always will be someone that will be like, what about the necklace? What about this? So, and we have a few people that
We're horrible
really
at
good.
It, honestly.
Yeah,
it's not us. Yeah.
But we have a few people that are really good at sort of keeping track of everything that's ever happened, and we lean on them really heavily. And then we will have those moments where we're like, ooh, we look smart if we pay this off now, but it wasn't necessarily something that we thought about. But we try and sort of think about things that we can sort of pay off.
Our writer's room also, it looks like the serial killer's apartment in the movie Seven, where it's just like everywhere. It's just like this intricate web, except it's not dark. It's like hopeful. But it's just like this, yeah, it's sad. But this just intricate web of story. We have a timeline around the whole perimeter of the wall. So you can kind of, wait, what happened in 1989? When did Kevin do this? Like you can really connect the dots that way. And so we're always looking for unexpected connections.
I know you guys were in here watching the episode a little earlier. I'm sure you've seen it many, many times.
Yeah, it's always fun to see with people, though.
Yeah,
we don't get to do that.
But how was it to see some of the monologues? Like Mandy has the one where she's talking to Gerald McRaney, and then Jack's monologue at the very end with the car dealer, where you get to see what he actually said to him is fantastic. But talk about writing those scenes and those monologues. They're really great.
We have, our cast is bulletproof. We've never been on, we're so lucky, like a show with this many actors, and not only can any of them knock one of these really huge, like couple page long monologues out of the park, but there's also no pairing of them that doesn't work. And we're always like looking for new combinations because it's always so much fun. But usually on a show, like you're at, this actor is good at this, but not so good at this. We really like, these people can do anything. And so you're not scared to throw them a page and a half of dialogue to no one because they can do it.
It's also, we have seen it 1,000 times because we did it, we were in editing with Dan and we were sort of there for every second of it. They're so good that I can sit here and cry, and it's not because of our writing. It's honestly that they take me away from that experience of making the show, and I just believe that they are those people.
But those monologues in particular, did you draw from something personal, or are you just so in tune with the characters you kind of knew where they were at?
I think we really love this family by now, and we don't honestly usually get like visibly emotional writing the show. This is one where we were together and we were did have it up on the screen.
It was so sad.
And every 2 minutes, like one of us would be like, shit, this is we're like both very embarrassed, but it's because we have been on this journey with them for a year and a half already. It sort of just came from knowing this family.
Do you guys have actual rules, like how so the show doesn't get weighed down too much? This episode's great because there is, I think, all the stuff with getting the car, like all that stuff, it's light and it needs it. But how challenging is that just across all the episodes? It's very challenging.
I wish there were rules. It's like a little bit more, you kind of have to like go with your gut. It's more when you're watching, it's really in editing. When you're watching there's such a fine line between like too melodramatic, like sort of bad TV movie and where we try to be. And we always try to undercut with a little bit of humor and lightness. Sid, our composer, does a beautiful score and it's so understated, and he's always doing it to the exact right amount, but there's a balancing act there. But that really happens in post, in like finding the right amount of sad.
Once you guys, as the writers' room, once you got past the Super Bowl episode and even this episode, did the writers' room change at all? Was there kind of a little bit of a release, just in a way that you didn't have to kind of service this part of the story so much?
Yeah, I think so. And I think there was really, after the Super Bowl, there was a real desire from all of us to want to do sort of some more fun and just like different episodes that weren't so much related to the death. So like this is the last time in this season that we actually visit this timeline. We kind of put a pin in it here for the future. And then so after this episode, like we did a really fun one where they all go to Vegas and we're just, back with the 9-10-year-old kids. And then we did an episode all about Deja. So I think we were all sort of craving, exploring other parts of our universe. Yeah.
Well, and I want to talk about Deja a little bit. We'll jump around a little bit, but talk about bringing in a new character like that, because she was kind of around for a couple episodes and she disappeared. And I know for me, I was kind of happy when she came back. I didn't realize that I kind of missed her.
Yeah, because she's awesome. That girl is awesome.
But
right?
then
that was her, guys. Yeah. That was her second ever job. She was like, had a couple of lines on an episode of Chicago Fire, and we found her. And then she's going head to head with Sterling.
Yeah, we did. They did the casting did like this big open call because we wanted to find someone that didn't feel sort of like a child actor that you've seen a million times. And she did. She came in lyric and she auditioned. And I was like so nervous for her. I was like, this is too nerve-wracking. No child should have to do this. And she did a scene with Sterling and she did one with Susan, and it was like she was a pro. It was
her first day on set with us. She was doing this huge scene with Susan where Susan finds cigarettes and they get in an almost physical altercation. She calls her a bitch. It was like really intense. And then she just did it amazingly on her first take. And then they're like, all right, turning around. And she's like, what's turning around? And we're like,
it's crazy.
It means you did a really good job. Oh my God. Well, and was it because of what you saw in those earlier episodes that you knew you could do a whole episode pretty much? Because she's in almost every one of those scenes, if I remember right.
Yeah, we just knew she could do it. I mean, and you really have to have the right actress in order to pull that off. And she was flawless, in our opinion.
Now, in the finale, hopefully you guys have all seen the finale, there's some flash forwards that we see kind of towards the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm always kind of like, okay, how much should we trust these that they are going to become big stories in season 3? But obviously you had to think about where you're going with season 3, but can you talk about that just as much as you can without spoiling stuff?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely those aren't just random moments. Like, we're going to pay those off, I promise. That's the kind of stuff that we just debate over for hours and hours, because you really are locking yourself into stuff there. So you're thinking about your future self, and it's like, once I put this on TV, I really have to know where I'm headed with it. So we really do make sure that we are really confident in stuff like that. And we have a real plan for the show. Dan had a long-term plan from the very beginning that has certainly evolved, but we really do know where these characters are headed. And because of that, we're able to pepper in these little sneaks of what's to come.
So you know what's happening in season 3.
Well, yeah, we did. We actually just did a 6-week writer's room before we broke. We just pushed everyone to the absolute brink of exhaustion, and planned out kind of the big strokes of season 3. Yeah.
Okay, but you're not going to tell us.
No,
too
I
much.
can't.
Yeah, okay. All right. I won't be that guy. What are some of your writing inspirations when you were maybe just getting started, or when you were just starting to write?
We're terrible at this question.
I know.
We both sort of grew up sort of loving classic sitcoms, actually. It's one of the things that drew us to each other in college. So, like, we had sort of grown up with your Mary Tyler Moores and your I Love Lucy's, and sort of those shows that you could watch as a group that did make you laugh, but also made you feel. And I think we do draw a lot from that.
Yeah, in a way, like This Is Us it's so different stylistically, but in terms of its DNA, like there have been times where we'll want to do a story and then it'll be like, oh, they just did that on the Norman Lear, the One Day at a Time reboot. So it's like there is kind of this like those multicams that I think used to be about like people who really just enjoyed being around each other and were looking out for each other and dealing with the struggles of just being a human every day, like the Norman Lear shows and the Grant Tinker, Mary Tyler Moore shows. We very much have the spirit of that in this.
Well, I remember when in the pilot, and I think we revisited, but when Kevin's in his sitcom, that to me felt like it could really be a sitcom. Anybody else agree? Like
that's what we used to do. Yeah,
there'd be a really hot guy called the Manny, and that would be him. But yeah, so that you definitely pulled from that for that portion of the story.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
Yes, very much so.
There was no question there. Do you guys have a kind of a running list in your head, maybe, of just things you want to do with the characters in the show and the stories, like when the right time is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, we're always looking to do more, and we always get asked, and we just, in our finale this year, we finally introduced someone from Beth's family, and someone from Sully, who plays from Toby's family. So that's something we want to do more of, is, explore their stories. Like I said, everyone is just so strong that we just kind of want to keep on, getting more and more into the characters' lives that we haven't yet had a chance to explore.
I think we are, one of the things about sort of being past Jack's death is we're really excited to sort of show other parts of his life, because he still is pretty mysterious in a lot of ways. So now we're sort of feeling very ready to sort of get into other things that he's been through.
That's great. And if you guys have not been checking out the movies, you guys have a movie in theaters right now.
Yeah.
If you guys even love Simon, I told him before, I was like, I have to ask you about Love, Simon, because I know Greg Berlanti, the director, really well. But talk about how you guys came to that, because I know it's based on a book. But tell me how you started with the project.
Sure. Temple Hill, the producers, we've known them for a while, and we love the movies they make, and we've wanted to find something to do with them, and it hadn't sort of clicked before. And they brought us this book called Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda, and we read it, and we loved it. And then we found out that there had never been sort of a major studio movie with a gay teen lead before. And then we thought, that's crazy. So then we really just thought, thought like we'd love to be a part of it and we'd love to do it. And then we did.
Yeah.
That's great. And what I loved about it, because I've seen a lot of gay films, being a gay guy, but I love. That's what you do. Now I know why everybody's laughing. But I love the fact, and I talked to Greg about this, the fact that it's a coming out story, but it's not about him figuring out if he's gay or not. Like, he knows right off the bat that's who he is. It's more like, how do I tell everybody? Which I just thought was an interesting take. Did you guys see it that way when you were writing it?
Yeah, definitely that. And it was very important to us and Greg and everybody involved that this was a movie where like nothing really that bad happens. It's sort of like it's in a way it's like a very glossy, typical high school romantic comedy in a space that has never existed before. So we didn't, there's a lot of like the independent gay films of the past are marked by tragedy, or someone gets sick, or there's a horrible hate crime, or what have you. And this was not that. That was not the movie we wanted to make. We wanted to make a big, fun high school comedy where the lead kid just happens to be gay.
You guys go see it. It's still out there in theaters. It's wonderful. We have a lot of questions from you guys. Thank you for putting them in. So we're going to see audience questions. Where's Lynn? Lynn? Hi, Lynn. Lynn wants to know, can you talk about the challenges of making a show with a dual linear timeline? You talked about it a little bit, but once you're caught up with either timeline, do you intend on flashing forward or flashing backwards to explore new stories? Do you guys go timeline crazy sometimes?
We do. Again, we have like our people that are really good at that and are sort of keeping track of it very diligently. But yeah, it's a struggle to keep track of. But like Isaac said, like, our audience has grown so savvy that it's also really freeing, because there's something so exciting about the fact that you can just go anywhere at any point in time. So we're going to go to some new ones too next year.
Yeah.
Well, and I know I watch the show, I think, more carefully than I do other shows, because I do kind of look for just little moments that you guys I think you plant them. As a viewer, I always think of that, and then hoping for the payoff later. Maybe they're not. Maybe I'm reading too much into them, but
sometimes probably, but a lot of the times no. Like in that decision, like in this episode when Kate says like, "Can we not spread the ashes, all of them?" That was we had always had this grand plan that on her wedding day she would kind of finally close that chapter. So.
Like I said, crackpot.
Yeah.
That was a slow cooker,
yep.
But I still
slow
said
cooker.
Crackpot. Yeah. Where's Nick Bender? Is Nick here? Oh, there he is. Hey.
Hi.
How much improvisation happens on the set?
Interesting. There's some that do it more. Justin and Sterling, I think, they both do a lot of it.
Sully does a bit.
Sully does a bit. All of them can do it. I mean, they're so natural, and they sort of like feel their characters and know them so well. Sterling's usually, Justin too, is the one that are like running over and being like, what about this? Can I try this? But they all, and Milo too, like if there's like a little language thing that he knows doesn't feel quite right to him, he'll always have an adjustment that almost pretty much 100% of the time it's like, yes, you're right, you should do it that way.
Yeah, but they're all so respectful too. Like they always, even if it's like the tiniest change that I wouldn't even notice probably, they always come to you and say like, is this cool? They're really the best in that way.
I'm guessing now that they've done 2 seasons together, they also know each other so well, so they know how they can riff together.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Where's Elijah? Elijah Cook? Hey, Elijah. He's asking about pitching the show. I know it was Dan. You guys weren't involved.
Dan
with the
didn't
pitching.
pitch the show. He actually just wrote it. It started.
Okay.
This was. It was originally he had started to write it as a feature. A lot of it was based on his family, and it had more characters and more parts to it. And he never finished it. And then one day, I think he was revisiting old projects and read it and said, maybe it's not a feature because it doesn't really have a clean ending. Maybe it's a TV show. So he wrote the script and then sent it out to all the networks, and NBC was the place that really felt like they got it and they were going to be the best home, and then it went from there. But there was never a pitch.
When you guys read the pilot, you just knew you wanted to be a part of it. And
Yeah, we were doing Grandfathered at the time with Dan, so his office was like sort of in that building, and he would like call us in. He'd be like, guys, come watch this. And this guy, like he was Aquaman, but look, he's like an amazing dramatic actor. And then he like pulls up Justin Hartley's audition. So we kind of saw the whole thing come together. We had front row seats to the pilot, and it just kept getting better and better.
Yeah, I've talked to Justin a couple of times. I love talking to him about Passions. Did anybody watch him on Passions? And he's great because some actors don't want to talk about those kinds of history, but he's like, oh my God, there were times 3 weeks with his shirt off, just a 3 week storyline like that. Yeah. But yeah, he's come a long way because he does really great work in
Oh
this.
yeah,
stellar.
I mean, he's one that you just anything. We sort of he was so great in the pilot and he's so funny, but we didn't know sort of everything he could do. And then every step of the way, he's just risen to the occasion and been incredible. And sort of it was when he was filming the scene where he loses the necklace, and the entire crew was just weeping. We were like, "This Justin, he can really."
I feel like every character in the show kind of breaks your heart in a different way. Do you guys feel like that? Because they all just hit you differently, but it's amazing. April Sugarman. Hi, April. Who are your favorite directors, either that you've worked with or would love to work with? I'm guessing on the show or even in the feature world.
On the show, I mean, we love all of our directors are fantastic. In particular, John and Glenn, who did the pilot and you do a few every year, and Ken Olin, who's our producing director, and directed this episode you guys just watched. We know them the best. We work with them the most, and they just they're the best. The three of them are the best. And then, I mean, we've only had one movie made, but Greg Berlanti was a dream. I can't imagine it going any better than that. He has approximately 8,000 TV shows, and yet he took the time to completely devote himself to this movie for a year. So
yeah, we thought we were busy until we met Greg, and then we were like, we're very lazy. We should do more stuff because it's unbelievable how he works.
If you guys don't know, Greg has pretty much all the CW shows.
yeah, he basically runs the CW.
Arrow,
yeah.
Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow. Then he also has the Blacklist, and
It's insane.
I think Deception his name's on, and
then he does 10 pilots a year too. It's nuts.
Jovial. Where's Jovial? There's Jovial. Wants to know, as a kid from Queens who had a weight issue, first of all, thank you for creating a real life compassionate character in Kate. What was the thought process? I mean, I guess Dan created her, but just in telling that story, because it's such a beautiful story. And Chrissy, I can't imagine anybody but Chrissy playing it just so beautifully. But talk about just that storyline and what we've seen her go through in the last 2 seasons.
Sure. Yeah, it's very heavily, and Dan has spoken about this, based on Dan's own sister. And it was really important to him, I think, to honor the journey that he's watched her go through. She actually serves as a consultant on our show, so she gets all the scripts. And I think, similarly to Dan's sister, he sort of watched this progression in her and sort of watched her sort of have these issues, but also sort of reach this much more fulfilled place in her life. And I think that's sort of what we hope to do with Kate, and what we feel like we've been doing sort of throughout the course of the season, is that there's a weight thing, and then there's also sort of so much more going on with her as well. And we sort of always try to balance those simultaneously.
Did you guys know early on that she sang? Because I know that became a part of the show.
We were so lucky.
We were lucky. I think we knew a little, but then it was the first time she did it was Time After Time.
Yeah, we didn't know she had a voice though. We offered her to lip sync.
And it was, we were like, oh, well, this is stunning. We really lucked ourselves into something. So.
And then Hannah, who plays Teen Kate, has a really beautiful voice. She can sing. They all do it themselves.
That's amazing. That's great. Hallie? Okay. Oh, there she is. She's saying, how do you think a creative or more procedural show could bring into their work the more down-to-earth, relatable storytelling and character portrayals you have in This Is Us? Because I know procedural writing is such a different muscle.
Yeah,
but
we've never done a procedural. I don't know if I could do it. I'm always in awe of them. I mean, I think the shows that do it, that I love, that do it really well, like the ERs and all John Wells shows and the Good Wives, it feels like they really make space to go into the characters' personal lives. And my favorite episodes of ER were the ones where they left the hospital completely, and Anthony Edwards and George Clooney were just going on a road trip to find his dad or whatever it was. But that's what I love. So I think my favorite procedurals are the ones that just make space to follow their characters out of the police department or out of the hospital or wherever they're doing the day to day. Let's see what their apartment looks like.
We were on a panel once, and I'm going to steal this from someone else that was on the panel, and they said, I never sort of can buy into a procedural because nothing funny ever happens. And I thought that was so smart. It's true. It's you never just see someone skidding on blood or something like that. Like real. And I think that's sort of what we try to do is you can have such grief and such tragedy, but life is inherently funny, so funny things keep happening in the midst of that. By the way, I don't know if that's true. Maybe procedurals are doing that. But I did think it was a really interesting sort of thought about what could make them a little bit more three-dimensional.
Well, I haven't seen every episode, but I don't think I've ever seen Mariska Hargitay slip on a puddle of blood just for laugh's sake. Like,
I
oops.
think they're doing fine over there, though. It's
Yeah, they're doing just great.
For the last 28 years. Yeah.
Season 20 or something. Yeah, that's great. I did want to ask, it was on my sheet and I forgot. How'd you guys get Ron Howard involved with the show? Because I love seeing him pop up,
Right.
but he became part of the storyline. And how did that start?
That was one. Dan Fogelman knew him a little bit through a feature, and reached out to him, and he had watched the show, and he agreed to. I don't think he knew what he was getting into, honestly. He agreed to come like do one little like the cameo bit at the end of our first season, and then we were like, well, Ron, now we've like said that you are directing this movie, and it's like the movie's the story for season 2. He could not be cooler. He could not be more gracious. He was in London directing his Star Wars movie, and we actually flew a little unit out and sort of faked a scene, faked his half of a scene on the Star Wars set. Like that's how awesome this guy is. Like he's directing the biggest franchise ever, and he takes 2 hours to come do a scene for This Is Us. He's just the greatest.
I actually thought about that because it's usually him in an office somewhere, and I'm like, they just like pop into his office in Beverly Hills, and
that's our one of our executive producers, Jess Rosenthal. That's his actual office on the Paramount lot. So we throw up like an Apollo 13 poster or whatever, and just pretend it's Ron's.
Well, it's funny because I grew up in the '70s, so I remember him as an actor before director, and I was like, I kind of miss seeing him on TV. So maybe you guys can write a bigger arc for him next season.
Get Henry Winkler on too. Do a reunion.
He's around. Henry's around. Yeah. Another question from April. What do you love most about your job?
Oh gosh, I think we're so lucky. Like the writers on the show are incredible, and our cast is beyond phenomenal. It's a really lovely group of people, and to just get to go every day and sort of to share intimate stories about our lives and sort of have conversations you never get to sort of have in your everyday life about race and about weight and about love and sort of all of this stuff. I've never experienced anything like it. It's like a college class I never got to take but wish I took. And then I think for us to sort of know Dan for almost a decade and to have worked with him so closely and then to sort of do something so closely that means so much to all of us, it's pretty fun and it feels like sort of a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, and then it's like great to be popular and have a big audience, but what's so cool about this show is when you go out into the world. For our actors, it happens all the time. For us, we have to actually tell people what our jobs are. But is like you get like it's not just I love your show. They really share something with you. And you hear like very intimate stories that people just want to open up and kind of tell you like really powerful parts of their lives. So to sort of get to have those interactions with strangers on sort of a weekly basis is pretty special.
Second part of that question is, what do you find the most challenging part of your job?
Oh my God, it's such a hard job. The schedule is the hardest part of the job. We do 18 episodes a year, and we do them. This season we aired 10 episodes in a row with no hiatus, airing wise. So it's just like that. It's a ton of content that we create in an incredibly short amount of time, and it's all happening at once. And there's 3 of us, but there's just so many places to be. It's really brutal.
So the show wrapped up a couple weeks ago, I think. So what are you on a little hiatus now, or are you really just like working on season 3?
We did like a 6-week season 3 thing. Now we're on like a tiny This Is Us hiatus, and then we come back in beginning of May.
Well, I think everybody will be watching when it comes back in the fall. Thanks everybody for being here, and thank you guys
so much for coming out.
Yeah. Thank you.